There you are. The body on that is just about finished. Although, as I say, there's nothing that hasn't been covered before, except the fitting of the chimney and the dome. Now, I'm going to have to cheat here and show you how to do this retrospectively on a dummy model. All I've been saying, or most of the time, is all soldering should be done, if you can, from the inside. Things like chimneys and domes, sometimes it's impossible to put on without soldering from the outside. Now, if you have brass onto brass or brass onto nickel silver, then you can contemplate soldering on the outside. You'll notice that Alan gives you lots and lots of different chimneys and domes for this 4F. They're a very long-lived engine from Midland days right until the war. Now, they are cast in lost wax, and it's the very devil to clean up. In the case of this one, it's not too bad, but in the case of this one, then in fairness and without being critical of Alan, I would suggest that something where you've got these prominent seams is returned with a polite request, could you have a replacement? But it'll do, at least for the point of how you solder these things on. Now, there's no way you'll cut this stuff off with a pair of side cutters. You'll just blunt them, and even if you did, this will end up as an unguided missile and probably take your partner's, wife's, your friend's eye out. So you really need to get rid of it with a piercing saw. And what you do is just cut through. You have to cut through at the maximum concave point, if that's not too balmy a description. By that you can see, I hope, that I've started cutting that. You can't cut it that way. All you'll do is cut into the base of the dome. So just go easily. And there you are. Now, there's some small amount there that needs cleaning off. So using a round file, you can take that out. Very often it won't be a problem, but it is difficult to get off. And there's no substitute for just hard work at that. You can use a dental burr and worry away at it. Now, I did say earlier that this is a bit of a cheat. I've already soldered it onto the 4F, so this is a bit of a dummy, but the principles will be shown, I hope. You've got to tin this next with 145 solder. Now, because it's a large lump of brass, it will take a lot of heating up, so you need to keep the iron on it for a time. Don't try and hold this in your fingers while you do this. It needs to be completely covered in solder. Now, that is very, very hot, so just pop it down and leave the thing. What I've done is tin that with 145 solder. I hope you can see there, and it's been rubbed down slightly. It doesn't need to be perfect, this. In fact, you need a larger area of solder than the base of the dome. Now, the reason for tinning it with 145 solder is that I'm going to solder it onto the boiler with low melt. Now, once again, I stress this is a cheat. If you were doing the model, you would make sure the dome was in exactly the right position by setting it up. Remember how I used a small engineer's square, or an engineer's small square, perhaps should be better grammar. I'm sure big engineers have squares as well. Now, what I'm going to do is just hold this on. Now, because I'm using low melt, I don't need the thing quite as high. So with luck, I'm not going to burn my fingers. There are all sorts of dodges. You can use damp cotton wool as a kind of barrier between your finger and the work. But the low melt flashes instantly, if you can see there. And then you go across to the other side. Oops. Plenty of flux. And there's a whacking great gap there. But don't worry. You use a lot of low melt, so make sure you have plenty of shares in metal companies. That's a load. That will fill in nicely. The one huge advantage that this method has is that it is pretty permanent. You won't pull that off, even though it's soldered with low melt. I wouldn't recommend this soldering a white metal casting to a white metal boiler, because all you will do is damage the boiler. There's probably another half an hour's work to thoroughly clean that up. If I go to the 4F model, you can see that there's still a little bit of evidence of solder there, but not too much. A little bit more cleaning up necessary there. But that was soldered on in exactly the same way.